QR code in the back there next to all the handouts. So any of the resources that you're holding in your hands are available in a online folder, as well as some additional resources. So there's a QR code back on that table to the right, and there's one more QR code on the table over to the left. So if you want to find any additional resources, they're on there as well. But we're going to wait for a couple more folks to roll in here before we get started.
I'll just be kind of floating. Sweet. When I'm needed, I'll up here. When I'm not needed, I will. You're not running this? And I had them turn the mics up just a little.
That was quiet, right? Okay, cool.
Come on in, everyone. You can grab some of our program guides in the back. If you didn't hear already, there are QR codes, the first of many, to access all these resources online as well. But as you guys are just getting settled, I'll just go ahead and get started. We'll go over introductions in a moment, but the agenda is as follows. We're going to go over introductions of our grants team. I know there's a lot of new faces here at the Division of Outdoor Recreation, so we're excited to introduce some of the newer team members. And then we'll go over what the eligibility and when our grant cycle, kind of what that process looks like for anyone who's new, or just as a reminder for you veterans in the room. Then we'll go over our different grant opportunities. Of course, we'll be covering the state grant opportunities as well as federal grant opportunities. And then by raise of hands, can we just get an idea of who has attended our grant tour in the past? Awesome. Welcome back. For those of you new, we're really excited. It is a lot of information, but we're always happy to reiterate and repeat and ask questions or answer questions. As far as those who have attended before, this year we've done it a little differently. Like I said, we will cover our grant opportunities, but then we will be doing a deeper dive into some of the aspects of the grant, that including budget, what it looks like to do a reimbursement, and then just some best practices at the end. As far as questions go, I'm going to jump to this one really quick. If you have questions that you want to ask during and throughout the presentation, you can scan this QR code I'll leave up and punch in that number. We have it's just an online way to gather questions, and then I can respond to you immediately. So if you can get into that, that's a great way to ask a question. We also will have some mics floating around. Since we are recording this, we just want to make sure that you have a mic before you say a question, so that everyone, if you watch the recording later, that you can hear the question. So if you have a question throughout, just be sure raise your hand so we can get a mic to you. We will leave some time at the end for more formal Q&A if you're able to just wait. But I'll jump back here. This is just introducing the grants team. You probably recognize some of these faces. We have Tara McKee, who's our Deputy Director over the grants at the Division of Outdoor Recreation. and we're excited she's here in person as well. Then we have Patrick Morrison. He is our program manager, recreation director. I'm so sorry. Everyone's getting new titles. Program recreation director of sorts. He manages and oversees our state grants. We have Evan Beich here in the front. He administers our federal grants. Caroline Weiler, she is also here in person. She is a new program manager over our UCOR, Utah Children's Outdoor Recreation Education Grant, as well as the Every Kid Outdoors program. Rachel Toker, she is our off-highway vehicle grant administrator, and I think she'll be joining us pretty soon here. Jorge Vasquez is up here in the front. He'll be presenting as well over the off-highway vehicle and our new boating grant. Myself, I'm Emily Meadows. I am the new administrator over our UOR grant, as well as I do some planning stuff on the side. So I'm kind of half grants, half planning. And then Maureen Casper is our contract analyst. So if you've received an email from Maureen, that's great news. You've gotten a grant, and so she does a lot of hard work for us to make sure all the contracts get into place. So going forward, here's just a quick overview of the different state grant opportunities that we offer here in the Division of Outdoor Rec. Like I said, there is the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. We call it UORG. The Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant, or RRI. We have our Off-Highway Vehicle Recreation Grant. And then these other ones on the other side is our Utah Outdoor Classroom Grant, as well as the Utah Children's Outdoor Recreation and Education Grant. Those two we will not be covering in depth today. That cycle just closed in the fall. But those two, again, like I said, Caroline manages those grant programs, and they really are geared towards, the classroom grant is for, infrastructure for outdoor classrooms, whereas the UCOR grant is more for programming, for getting kids outside. If you need equipment or transportation, insurance, stuff like that, that would be covered under UCOR. And again, that will open up next fall. And then we also have a Outdoor Recreation Planning Assistance Program. We call it ORPA. We won't be covering that today. It's kind of in a redevelopment phase, and so we are excited that it'll probably be opening up sometime early next year. But if you're signed up for our newsletter, you'll get the information when that is available. As far as the federal grant opportunities go, we have the Recreation Trails Program, or RTP, and Land and Water Conservation Fund. We call it LWCF. Those are two of the grants that Evan manages and will be covering. And then we have the Clean Vessel Act, as well as some other boating-related federal grant opportunities that Jorge will be covering. So this is a eligibility sheet guide. Again, it's available digitally online in that online resource folder. Essentially, we have at the top just all the various grants that we offer, and on the side, the different organizations that are often eligible to apply to these grant programs. So you can see, if any municipality, you're eligible for any of our grants, and then there's obviously nuances between the different grants. So if you just want a quick snapshot of, okay, I'm a nonprofit, which ones can I apply for? This is a really great way to get an idea of that. These are just some quick dates that I'll be mentioning and going over to really highlight and get this on your radar. So for the UORG, RRI, and our newest grant, we call it Community Parks and Rec. These will all be opening up January 13th and closing March 17th. So put that date on your calendar if you're interested. As for the OHVR and RTP, these two will be opening up February 1st. And then we have other, over OHVR has another cycle in the summer. And then we have LWCF will either be opening up in the summer, potentially the fall. But again, we're going to go over all of these grant opportunities in depth more, and just wanted to give those dates out right now. So this is just a quick overview of what the grant cycle actually looks like. The first and most important step is that you apply. So thank you all for coming today. We're very excited I did want to mention we've been touring the entire state giving this presentation, and this is our 12th of 12 presentations. So we're at the very end. We went all through southern Utah, went all across northern and central Utah. So we're really excited. People have really given great feedback that this was a helpful presentation, so we hope that it is. But going back to the grant cycle, so you apply once we get that application. We do an internal staff review and just to make sure everything's eligible. Something we do offer at the division is an early staff review, which I highly recommend taking advantage of. With the early staff review, before the grant cycle has closed, we're able to review your entire application, give you any feedback, look over your budget, just make sure everything looks as best as it can so that it can get highly scored. So with that internal DOR review, then we send it over to our scoring committees. We at the Division of Outdoor Rec do not make any final approvals or decisions about who gets funded. We have advisory councils for that. So they do the actual scoring of each project, and then they hold a scoring meeting, which is a public meeting. So if you're interested in attending that public meeting, just let us know. They do the scoring over 2 days, or the meeting between 2 days usually. And then once they choose their final projects, we have to send it over to the Department of Natural Resources Executive Director Joel Ferry for final approval. Once we have all those, solidified and approved, then we send out emails to both. Whether you were awarded or not, we will notify you, so you're not left in the dark. But those that were awarded projects will then be sent a contract from Maureen, and once you sign that contract, then you're able to begin work and getting things going. So with that, I'm going to now start with our Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant, or UORG. So UORG, we're very excited. This is our most, within the state, the longest, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, so it's been around for a while. Projects that UORG can fund is kind of your typical outdoor recreation activities. So you can see here, it's not an exhaustive list by any means, but we have camping, fishing, nature enjoyment, which would include wildlife viewing or stargazing. We do fund off-highway, motorized activities as well as non-motorized activities. You can see there's rock climbing, shooting, snow activities, water activities, and then wheel sports such as skateboarding, scootering, rollerblading, anything like that is all eligible under UORG. Some of the things that I really wanted to emphasize to help you keep in mind for what would make a competitive application. Again, this is a pretty competitive grant, but we do see a lot of successful applicants. The thing the committee members are really looking for is having some type of conceptual drawing or a pretty clear map. If it's like a trail system or a skate park, they like to see that there's actually some idea of what this trail system is going to look like. Oftentimes people will submit a Google screenshot, like Google Maps screenshot with a star. That's pretty vague. They don't really know what's going on and what the project actually is. So if you even have coordinates of the location or that conceptual drawing so that they can visualize the project, that makes a great application. Establish partnerships and letters of support. So this really just shows that you've done your due diligence. You've talked to all the people that need to be involved in this project. Perhaps it's your local community and you've done public engagement and people are really supportive. Include that in your application. When it comes to letters of support, we love to see stuff from, our federal land managers, if it's on federal land, making sure that they're aware of this project and they are supportive of it, as well as state partners, whether it's, the local, maybe it's a state park, or perhaps you're working with a nonprofit or a friends group, just anyone who's been, involved and is really wanting to see this project happen. It will really support not just you, or it shows the community it's not just your, dream and your idea. There's a lot of buy-in from other folks. Another thing they love to see is that you've considered accessibility for all types of users, whether that be those in wheelchairs with disabilities or those of all ages. ranging from, little toddlers all the way to elderly folk. How can everyone have this be a benefit to them? And then lastly, something that they really like to emphasize and they love to see is how, as you've taken into consideration how this is going to connect into the larger or maybe just surrounding community. Thinking about connectivity, connecting it to existing recreation opportunities or perhaps future recreation opportunities is something that, it's great if you have, a skate park. I keep saying skate park. Maybe it's like an ice skating rink over here. How are kids going to get to this ice skating rink? Can they ride their bikes to it on trails? Can they access it from school? Could someone who's visiting your town, get to the main street or the downtown area and then access a recreational opportunity? Just kind of zooming out just a little bit to see how it's going to connect into the larger landscape really shows that it just is, they love to see that. So here's just some overview of how UORG matching works. All of our grants do have a match requirement. However, with UORG, historically we've operated with this county-based sliding scale. This is the first year that we are now using that as a suggested county-based match. So what that means is, obviously we're here in Salt Lake County, so it's a 50-50 match. However, we have heard from some of our smaller communities like Kearns, while they may be located in Salt Lake County, they might also not be able to meet that 50-50 match. Another example we've used is, Ivins, who's located in Washington County. They're a smaller community, and so what the suggested county-based match really means is if you can't make your county-based match, we'll have a needs statement as to let you explain why. State your case, and I think the committee members will take that into consideration when looking at the amount that you can put towards the project. We do want that minimum match to be 20%, which is very generous when it comes to grants. As far as the match goes, half of it must be cash, the other half can be in kind. It doesn't have to be, but we do love to offer the in kind as an option for those who maybe you're a small nonprofit and you might not have the cash up front, but the in-kind can really boost your match allowance. And then something new this year that we're also very excited about is this pre-build cost support. So things such as design, engineering, perhaps it's a planning or a feasibility or environmental assessment. All these things typically must happen before you have a construction project. How our grants work is anything you spend before you're under contract, unfortunately, cannot be eligible for reimbursement. So that asterisk there, after a contract is awarded, if you still have some design, perhaps some engineering, just to finish up your total plan, 25% of that cost can go towards your match. That would be your cash match. So again, we know that these things historically people have just had to pay for themselves, and it can be quite the barrier for a lot of people. And so we really hope that this can kind of alleviate that burden. And I think a lot of people, at least they've expressed it throughout the state, they're very excited and appreciative of that. As a reminder to those veterans in the room or anyone new, our grants do operate on a reimbursement basis. We will be covering more in depth what that means, but typically that means that you spend the money, you send us your receipts, and then we will reimburse you here at the state. So with that, I will jump over to the Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant, or RRI. Again, this is going to run the same cycle as UORG, same dates of January 13th opening up. And it's very similar to UORG in the fact of the types of projects it can fund. It's simply just restoring, repairing, or repairing old or damaged recreation infrastructure. So the thing that RRI cannot fund is kind of your more basic annual maintenance that we hope the community or the applicant organization is taking care of themselves. A lot of times people will apply they have asphalt or like a paved trail, and there's cracks in the asphalt, and they want to fill in those cracks so that it remains smooth. Those typically don't score very high unless there's a very clear access issue. So what I'll say is we want RRI to go beyond that basic maintenance. It's, addressing a safety issue, an access issue. Perhaps it's going to protect a natural or cultural resource, like a boulder has fallen on a mountain bike trail and people have to hike their bikes up and around this boulder. That is a great RRI application. Or a trail was washed out from a storm. Those would be great for RRI. Again, what would make it competitive beyond, just going to address some key safety issue or access issue is having that specific plan of work. If you're just saying trail work and you don't really say it's this trail, there's a lot of downfall, there was a storm, or there's a fire, if it's just trail work, that's very broad. That doesn't give the scoring committee enough detail to know what's actually going to happen. Again, those established partnerships and letters of support for RRI, we do require, if it's with a federal partner or federal land manager, that you must have a letter of support from them so that they are aware of this type of work. And then, again, established partnerships. If you're working with the local mountain bike team to do something, or perhaps you've partnered with fishermen and they're excited about some fishing pond, just showing that you've established types of partnerships to restore infrastructure that is dilapidated is really great. So there's examples here that I'll briefly mention, and then there's also different examples in your program guide. The ones in the program guide are from this most recent grant cycle. They were the highest scoring projects in each of the different tiers, and we've included the actual committee members' comments so you get an idea of how they are thinking and what they are looking for, what they like, the kinds of questions they had. So in our regional asset tier, this tier goes up to $1 million this new year. We've increased all the award amounts. So regional asset is $1 million. We have the Pavant Trails over in Richfield City. Again, this is very much a regional project. It really diversified Richfield's recreation opportunities into more non-motorized, but it has been a draw for people all across the state to go ride these mountain bike trails, whether they like it or not. In our tier 1, we have the Manaway Maple Springs Park, and we were just up at Nibley yesterday and got to actually go visit Manaway afterwards. This is an awesome park that they've put a lot of love in to it. So much of their community has actually, done the asphalt, done the concrete, done the masonry. Like they have it was amazing hearing just that house did this and that house did the electrical and that house did this and that house this. So they really did, they're a small community, but they had a lot of community help. We funded an ice skating rink, so it's on their basketball court. They transform it into an ice skating rink in the winter, and it really, was able to extend the recreation opportunities into the winter, as well as a sledding hill. And then they've also, continued. They put it in a pump track. They, got another grant for pickleball courts. So really cool example of a small community making a huge, awesome project. In our mini tier, and for the tier 1 goes up to $500,000. In our mini tier, this goes up to $30,000 now. We have the Dragonfly Disc Golf Course over in Lehigh. Again, disc golf, we see this a lot. It's pretty common in the mini tier, as it's a lower, cost amount to put in the disc golf, and it can really activate a park that might not be used as much. And then in the RRI example here, we have the John Wesley Powell River Access Trail over in Green River. Green River was one of our stops this year, so we actually got to see it. I got to see it in person for the first time after looking at this picture for many months in the program guide. But essentially the bank had sloughed off and eroded away, and you could no longer access the Green River safely. And so now there's those steps as well as a ramp down to the river. So definitely addressed an access issue. Just to report back to anyone who's curious and likes data, with the 2024 UORG, we did award just over $15.5 million. So all these taxpayer dollars going back into the state. This was between 102 different projects throughout 24 counties. Something that the committee really tries to do is award about half of the about half of the approved projects go towards rural counties, and so this year the 42% of those were in rural counties. And then here you can just see kind of the widespread of different activities. So you have mountain biking and, hiking and nature walk at the top, all the way down to fishing, archery, Nordic skiing, skeet shooting, skateboarding. So again, there's a lot of opportunities and possibilities. If you have questions, we're happy to kind of brainstorm and see what we can do. So with that, I'm going to jump over to a new grant. We're very excited to offer this. It's called the Community Parks and Rec Grant, or CPR. We really like to think that outdoor recreation and community parks can really be the first place that kids and families often get introduced to outdoor rec. And then it can lead to a lifetime of, being active outside. So with the CPR grant, we've heard a lot from, communities just need a playground, or they just want to invest back into their community park. And historically, UORG, does not fund things such as, sport courts or pools or anything. So this is the first year that we've tried to respond to that gap in our grant offerings. And CPR is, we hope that, communities can breathe life back into their community by investing in their community parks. So the things that are eligible, again, are those more traditional, like playgrounds, swing sets, the surfaces associated with the playground, and then outdoor pools, splash pads, water features, sport courts, sport fields, and then any associated supporting amenity, like a parking lot, a bathroom, sprinkler system, benches, tables, all those good things. Again, the things that CPR cannot fund is indoor recreational activities. Since we are the Division of Outdoor Rec, we like to do things, we only fund things outside, really, with the caveat of a restroom. But equipment for those types of sports like balls, bats, or rackets, we can't fund the equipment. Removable infrastructure such as nets, pop-up tents, or umbrellas are ineligible. The general maintenance, again, we hope that the community will take that on. They'll put it into their city budget to actually upkeep this kind of park. And then the associated equipment, so we can't fund the lawnmowers or the garbage cans, unfortunately. And then any land acquisition would also be ineligible. If you're trying to acquire land for a park, we have other grants that could try and help with that. So again, we're very excited. We have set aside $2 million for CPR. The max amount you can ask for is $200,000. We think it's going to be a big hit, and I can't really say how competitive it's going to be. So if you have an idea and you're like, should I go for it? I'll probably say yes, go for it. Then I'll have a better idea of how many people are going to go for it. But the things to keep in mind that this grant is really geared towards, high density areas that really lack that green open space, as well as rural communities and low income communities. So it's really trying to address a very clear need that we've seen. One community in mind as, Helper, there's like one playground and it's very rural, they have no money. So we've talked to them, they're excited about this grant, and there's just so many opportunities we have to support the communities in this way. There's different criteria that the committee members will be looking at, like I said, kind of that how much green space is near this location, as well as we like to see the city's budget just to see, how much is this community actually working with? Maybe it's very little, and this grant would make a huge difference for their community. So something to keep in mind. We're very excited. With that, I will turn it over to Jorge to cover our off-highway vehicle recreation grant.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. Place my water on the floor, I guess. Thank you all. I just want to take a brief moment to kind of welcome you all to the DNR and taking some time out of your busy days to come and learn about our programs and how the grant process really works. Today I'll be talking about the off-highway vehicle recreation program and some boating programs that we have within the division as well. Part of my time actually dips into this program, so that's why I'm speaking on it on behalf of Rachel Toker, who's actually the grant administrator of that program. And then most of my time, again, goes into developing the boating program. the new statewide boating recreation grant program. So let's dive into it. Just to kind of give you a general idea of what this program really covers, there's kind of 7 different categories that go within this program. We go into, for example, trail work, access protection, education, search and rescue, snowmobile, off-highway vehicle tourism, and off-highway vehicle land acquisition. And then these numbers that are presented there, those are just the maximums and minimums that each funding category is allowed in terms of requests. Just for your general idea, that's why they're kind of there, just to show you what requests are allowed within the programs and the specific categories. Just to kind of give you a brief idea of some of the ineligible projects, I think it's oftentimes a lot easier to kind of speak on ineligible requests rather than eligible requests, just because there's so many eligible requests within the actual program. Within all these different categories, there's always new ideas from people coming up to us and giving us an idea of what they're wanting to do, and oftentimes there's more eligible opportunities rather than ineligible opportunities. So just to kind of give you a brief idea, I'm not going to go through each individual funding request, but just to showcase it and give you an idea of what requests are ineligible versus eligible. And please keep in mind that all these resources, again, that we're presenting today are going to be within the program guides that you have in your hand, as well as the online resources. So please keep that in mind. Like I had mentioned, it's easier to kind of talk about eligible requests. These are examples of those funded projects that we've had in the past. Within the actual trail work category, we had the Flint Trail, Two Big Ridge, Two Pipe Loop, Happy Canyon Trails, which is always a mouthful to say. But these are this project that's right here. They ended up restoring the trail and doing some work on it and made it more accessible for people to utilize. We also have participating in BLM travel management plans with Right Respect in terms of access protection. Education, this specific one with Pails for Nails, OHV Pocket Trail Guide, and Don't Burn campaign was a really creative way that Juab County Tourism Department utilized this funding category, specifically because what the issue that they had going on within the actual Little Sahara sand dunes, they had people burning pallets out there, and when you burn pallets, you get left over with nails, and it didn't necessarily just kind of pop one tire. Some people were losing all 4 tires, and it's kind of an expensive fix for their OHVs, and they were really creative in the sense that they used this opportunity to promote to why not to burn pallets out there, as well as a little competition for the community to kind of have. They actually weighed out the buckets, and they gave cash prizes for first place, second place, and third place. So really creative way to utilizing this category. And then for search and rescue, we have that Polaris Expedition UTV with Utah County Search and Rescue. This again was another really creative way in utilizing the funding, specifically because they actually modified the back of the bed of that UTV. When it comes to off-highway vehicles, sometimes it's not necessarily the most comfortable thing being out there in 50 miles of trail and long hours. And when it comes to search and rescue, you need to be quick, responsive, and they modified it simply because to try and make it more comfortable for those who might be injured and to be able to get people out a little bit quicker. And so it was a really creative way to utilize that category. Again, just to give you just get those wheels turning on what opportunities are out there within this grant. Some other examples that we have here is the motorized avalanche forecasting with the Utah Avalanche Center in the snowmobile category, the Paiute Trail Parker Mountain expansion marketing, which they essentially utilize this category to promote some nearby trails within Parker, within the Paiute Trail, and then as well as the year-round OHV land acquisition with Beaver Main Street Trailhead. This one is a really cool one just because they ended up purchasing some abandoned property and they developed it into a staging area for some nearby trails. So again, another really creative way of utilizing the grant, again, just to get those wheels turning. This has been more of my bread and butter for the last couple of months. It's been developing this new statewide grant program, which is the Utah Boating Recreation Grant. It's been super fun to be able to actually go out and talk to park managers and land and water managers to see what the needs of the recreational boaters have been. And I'll dive deeper into what some of these needs have been and some of the potential eligible projects within this. Just to give you a quick idea of some of these eligible entities, again, you have your state agencies, your counties, your municipalities. Something that's a little bit different within this program that you don't really see out of the other programs is a sense that water conservancy districts can actually apply for this program. And it's a great opportunity, and that's why I kind of like to highlight that, because it is a different entity that can apply. Some of these projects that can be included is essentially the development of publicly owned boating facilities. So that could be your boat docks, your ramps, public restrooms, and potentially even the parking lots of the specific to the boats. And then other things that goes to the actual protection of our waterways, specifically more into the erosion aspect. And I got some good pictures that I can show you on the next slide, as well as drought access mitigation, same thing with that one. This has been a really exciting opportunity for this next section in the sense that there's an alternative access point for non-motorized users. People don't tend to play nice with each other at ramps, and then they get into some arguments and user conflicts, and so it's a good way to kind of disperse recreation throughout the reservoir and lakes. So I'm really excited about that specific section there and seeing some of the things that come out of it. As well as this next section, I don't know of any other grants that kind of cover specific boating recreation search and rescue equipment. So this is going to be a really good opportunity just to kind of help and assist our search and rescue teams throughout the state. And then let's get into these next, some project examples. Keep in mind that these aren't funded projects. These are just pictures and ideas that I wanted to share with you all, just to kind of get those wheels turning and spinning. Again, keep in mind it goes into the overall development of these boating facilities. So that's going to be your boat ramps, your docks, and then your restrooms. With that waterway shoreline protection, that picture that I have right there in the center is actually called seawall. And they actually utilize that specifically more in our coastal states. However, our coastal states are dealing with a little bit more potential erosions, considering the fact that they get a lot more wave action, as well as they're dealing with a lot of salt water. So this is a really good opportunity to kind of really maintain and really invest in our reservoirs to kind of prevent that erosion, especially considering the fact that as I've been talking to state park managers and again just water managers, a lot of the consensus that I've gained has been that the cost of like your traditional erosion methods like riprap they're going up in price, and it's not as of a long-term kind of investment compared to this, which is seawall. That other section right there is that alternative access point for non-motorized users. I actually went to a conference in North Carolina, which I ended up meeting somebody who actually gave a presentation on this specific boat ramp, which was a really cool ramp in the sense that it's ADA compliant. Again, another thing that I've been noticing as I've been going throughout the state has been our reservoirs and lakes are lacking those ADA compliant amenities. And so again, introducing something like this to our reservoirs would be extremely beneficial. He actually even gave a demonstration to how he utilized this ramp. He actually walked down the ramp, or not necessarily, he wheeled the chair down the ramp and then had tied a string to his kayak and dragged it down the actual ramp, set it there, and had it kind of waiting for him. That middle picture there in between those two it shows his wheelchair, and he actually was able to lock his wheelchair into place, so that way he wouldn't have to worry about theft while he was out enjoying some water recreation. And he was actually able to lift himself out of his wheelchair and slowly make his way and pull himself into the actual kayak. So again, it's a really good opportunity to kind of help those with disabilities to kind of enjoy recreation like anybody else would. Another thing it goes into is that drought access mitigation. Keep in mind that our reservoirs, when they were first built and made, they were made with the intention and mindset that our water levels weren't going to stoop so low. They're getting to the point where our ramps are just falling off and we're losing access to the water. And so the idea behind this grant is to essentially extend those ramps and make it more accessible for people to access. And then in terms of boating search and rescue, the bill language kind of leaves it very vague in the sense of boating search and rescue equipment. And so ideas here can be, again, your search and rescue boats, drones, your remotely operated vehicles, which those are ROVs, which is essentially a little submarine that goes into the not so fun part of boating search and rescue, which is the recovery phase of a search and rescue. It's sad, it happens, but it's still a vital, important part to search and rescue to help bring closure to families that loses somebody in a drowning. Again, super vital to be able to provide for our search and rescue teams to be able to work effectively for that. Just some things to keep in mind within this grant is keep in mind this is a new opportunity that it's going to be really beneficial for the boating community, and I'm really excited for it to be out. Also keep in mind that this should be available sometime next calendar year. If I was to throw out a couple months and guesses to when it's going to be available, my guess would be anywhere between April and May. But please take that with a grain of salt, as things can change. And I'll keep you updated on how that pans out. But again, just keep these things in mind. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that this is a collaborative effort with the Division of Wildlife Resources and the Boating Access Grant, which is a federal opportunity there. Keep in mind that the Utah Boating Recreation Grant isn't actually eligible for federal entities. And I think the intention and mindset behind that was to kind of help, because the funding that comes to the Utah Boating Recreation Grant it comes from state boating registration dollars, and so they're trying to put that money back into the state for our state amenities, and so that's kind of the mindset and the intention there. But please keep in mind to try and utilize both these as a braiding grant, as Evan will actually touch on more braiding later on here, but this is a good opportunity to try and cut down timelines and increase the amount of funding that you have towards projects, and to essentially be able to pay for bigger ticket items. If you have more questions on the Boating Access Grant and that opportunity, I can give you contact information for the program manager over that. We can also just talk a little bit more after if you have any other questions about that grant. Another opportunity that we have here is the Clean Vessel Act. It's not necessarily a new opportunity. It's been out there for a little while. However, I don't think we've necessarily had sufficient resources to really market it and kind of help people understand that it's here. But keep in mind that this one, again, is a great opportunity in the sense of keeping our waterways clean and educating and informing our recreational boaters about the damages of sewage discharge from our vessels, as well as the location and how to operate a pump out and dump station. It also just goes into the actual development and operation and maintenance of these pump out and dump stations. Other projects could include your floating restrooms, which you would typically see more at like Powell or Flaming Gorge, just to give you some examples. It also goes into actually even purchasing a pump out boat, which again goes into more of that operation and maintenance of those facilities. Some things that it's not eligible for, it's going to be those law enforcement activities. Keep in mind that these amenities have to be open to the public. A question that I've gotten before is if it could be utilized for traditional sewage county septic systems, and no, it has to have that connection to the recreational boating sewage. If it has that connection, then yes, it'll be eligible there. And next, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Evan, who will talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Sweet. Well, thank you, Jorge, and good morning, everybody. And yes, thank you again for all of you taking the time to join us this lovely morning here to learn about the grant opportunities offered here by our division. I'm going to take us in a little bit of a different direction here. Is anybody excited to take a journey into federal grant land? I hope you are. I hope there's still some space remaining in those noggins of yours. I know there's been a lot of information going your way. So, as we're going through this, please feel free to shoot out any questions. I'm going to start with the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This is a federal grant program offered through the National Park Service. So this program provides funding for the acquisition and development of lands for use primarily in recreation, but also in conservation. Really anything that's going to get people outside and recreating. And so this program historically has been largely one of our tools for some of those more traditional recreation types. Emily talked a little bit about our new state-funded program that's going to fund more traditional community recreation types like community parks, pools, and splash pads, things like that. Traditionally, this program has kind of been the avenue for that. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how this program can support some of those larger community-type recreation initiatives, and we'll touch on that. But one thing we're excited about is utilizing this program for acquisition projects as well. That's something we finally utilized this past year for the first time. We funded 2 acquisition projects, one located in Summit County and another down in the town of Salina. And so, we're really just excited to see how this project can support any sort of, again, initiative to get people outside, recreating either close to home or any sort of initiatives that's going to maybe enhance conservation while also getting folks outside and learning, experiencing new things. So, of course, you can utilize this program not just for acquisition or development, but also a simultaneous project that's going to combine the 2 of those. So, by no means is this a comprehensive list of the types of projects that we will fund, but this will just, again, get the wheels spinning, and this is a list of not just projects that we can fund, but just an idea of the types of projects that we tend to fund. So anyways, the LWCF can be used for acquiring park or natural space, as I touched on. Also, picnic spaces, natural space is a big one, of course, and playgrounds, ball fields. And again, any of those sports that are played on a court or with a ball close to home. Water-oriented facilities as well. Historical and cultural interpretation, that's sort of a new use of the fund we've seen as well. Again, I had talked a little bit about education initiatives, things that are going to, break that mold of the traditional recreation types, but are still getting people outside and learning new things. Campgrounds, fire pits, fishing and hunting areas, winter sports facilities, amphitheaters, any sort of supportive facilities like restrooms and maintenance buildings, as long as they're enhancing that recreation experience, those are eligible as well. Nature centers and community gardens, we've seen those funded in the past year. So really just excited to see where this program can grow. Again, not a comprehensive list. We're open to new ideas of how to utilize this program. One thing, Jorge touched on this a little bit. So one thing that's really cool about our federal grant programs is that these can be used to match our state programs. So offset some of those costs that the applicant must endure. So these are really good opportunities to have a lot more large-scale, comprehensive projects utilizing both state funds and federal funds. That's certainly something that we encourage. So as far as the nitty-gritty details about the LWCF, this is a one-to-one matching grant, meaning the applicant pays for half of the project costs. Our max award is now raised this year, so we went from offering $2.5 million now up to $3 million are now available. It is a cost reimbursement grant, just like our other programs, so you can get partially funded throughout the project timeline. But however, typically the applicant or the awardee would start the project and then be reimbursed intermittently throughout the project. It is a 2-phase application process, meaning that you will apply to us as the state, and then we will take your projects to the National Park Service for final approval. And so our grant cycle, Emily touched on this a little bit. For those of you that have historically applied to this program, we are pushing our application cycle back just a little bit, most likely this summer. We'll have a concrete date for you guys very soon. We are just waiting for some more funds to roll in. We've been spending our funds very happily here, but now we got to wait for some more. Couple of things. I mentioned there's some differences here in federal land, and I'm going to touch on some of these. So one kind of key difference when applying to a federal grant program is being aware of NEPA compliance. And so that's the National Environmental Protection Act or Policy Act. And this is really anytime a federal funding can go towards a project, before federal funding can go towards a project, they want to ensure that there's not going to be any sort of negative impacts on environmental resources or cultural resources. And so NEPA is not something that you need to have completed before you apply to any of our programs. It is something that we just ask you be aware of. So highly recommend, if you've never heard of NEPA, but you're thinking of applying to a federal grant, maybe get out the Google, do a little Googling first. We're also, of course, working to provide more resources on our end to assist our applicants with the NEPA process, and I'll touch on those in a second. But yeah, just something to be aware of. Another aspect of the federal grant world is the federal timeline is going to move a little bit slower than our stateside programs. We are working on that. We have really seen an increase in productivity of the timeline there, really shortened that gap between the application and the actual award of these projects. But again, something to be aware of. One final aspect of the Land and Water Conservation Fund that's somewhat unique that I wanted to touch on is the fact that the project sites must remain a public asset in perpetuity. So meaning forever, when you apply this program, you'll establish a boundary around your park, so an official park map that is certified by the Park Service, and they just want to see that that's going to remain accessible to the public forever. And so we've actually funded over 500 different LWCF sites historically, and we have a map on our website. So any community managers here, you're welcome to go to our website and take a look at some of our historically funded LWCF sites. Technically, there is a 5-year inspection window with those, so highly recommend take a look, see if you might if you have a playground in your neighborhood, there's a good chance it might be an LWCF site. So highly recommend taking a look at that and making sure that your parks are still remaining accessible to the public. Before applying to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, I would also recommend taking a look at our brand new statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, or SCORP, or you could say the whole thing. That's quite a mouthful. The SCORP is really just going to be your reference guide. It's a cheat sheet for applying to this grant. So this past year, we had a statewide initiative where we were surveying land managers and different recreation suppliers across the state, as well as just everyday recreation users. We got a lot of very valuable feedback through that process, and really that allowed us to shape what our park priorities are going to be, what our federal funding priorities are going to be in the upcoming years. So this is a 5-year-long plan, and so as you can see, we have 4 core pillars that were identified through this process. But one thing that was also something that we're really excited about through the SCORP process was developing an online tool to assist our applicants. And one really key aspect of that online tool is going to be assisting with the NEPA process. Nothing crazy, but we're going to allow you to be able to put your project site, input that into our tool and get an idea of what kind of resources might be within the region. So it's really just something that can kind of help you get the wheel spinning. It's not going to knock out the compliance for you, but just give you an idea of if you have a suitable project location, as well as what sort of recreation types might be within the region. So really hoping to see projects that are going to connect into existing recreation resources. So that'll be live pretty soon, but just if you are going to apply, you'll see on our website that we have the new SCORP coming out pretty soon here, and that'll be a great resource for you. Any questions about Land and Water Conservation Fund before I move on here? Cool, and we can certainly answer something in. Okay, I do see a question. Can we get the microphone over to you? I apologize. I might be jumping the gun here on the question. Sorry, guys. Okay.
So is this for motorized or non-motorized?
Yeah, so either, I would say. Typically, for more of our motorized and trail programs, we would probably point you elsewhere. This is more for a land acquisition or community park type project. However, if you were looking for maybe a key land acquisition to benefit motorized projects, certainly an eligible use. Yeah. And so I apologize. I'm going to jump the gun. Maybe we're going to save questions for the end here. So let me touch real quickly on another National Park Service funded program. This is the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program. I just got back from a conference with the National Park Service, and they are really excited about this program. They're pushing a lot of people towards this. So I'm going to touch on it. It has some very, very specific eligibility requirements, but essentially this is the Land and Water Conservation Fund supercharged. This is a larger version of that with a little bit more, a lot more funding available. One key difference with this program, it's a nationally competitive grant program. So the entire country will all be competing when you apply for this program. So when you apply to this, you're competing against other states for a pretty substantial federal pool of funding. So I mentioned there's some very specific eligibility requirements for this. First and foremost, they want to see a minimum of 25,000 population threshold before you apply. And really the main idea behind this new program is benefiting economically disadvantaged regions within the state. So they're trying to get recreation access available to all different users throughout the state, especially those that have historically not had recreation opportunities close to their homes. However, something that we as a state are hoping to utilize this program for as well is to benefit some of our more, not just urban, but rural communities as well. So we are open to working with you on meeting some of these very kind of strict eligibility requirements. As a new program, I think they are going to be somewhat open to new and exciting projects. As long as we can articulate that we have a good need, I think they'll work with us there. But anyways, if you have interest in this program, certainly reach out to us and we can walk you through it. Again, I mentioned there's some more funding available. There's up to $15 million with this program. So this is for really large beneficial projects. And so just like the LWCF, it's a one-to-one cost reimbursement grant. So meaning the applicant pays for half. They would expect you to be able to have the capital to start this project and then being reimbursed as you commence the construction. The grant cycle, it's a rolling application, so it's really available all year. November 1st is the next deadline, but there will be continuous opportunities to apply for this. Just like the LWCF, you will apply as a state program, so it'll be competitive within the state category, and then we will take those projects to the National Park Service for final approval. But yeah, again, we will apply on your behalf to the Park Service. Cool. So I will talk about the final federal grant program, the Recreational Trails Program. So this one is offered by the Federal Highway Administration. We actually have one of our FHWA reps here with us, Zane Pulver, today. But I was just going to touch on really, this is a great program for funding. We had a question about motorized. This is a great grant for funding the restoration and development or even large-scale maintenance of motorized and non-motorized trails throughout the state. There's two distinct categories within this program. So as mentioned, there's a motorized category and a non-motorized, and these are actually applied for and scored separately. And so this program has really been it's been around for a while, and it's been a pretty valuable asset for a lot of our partners throughout the state, especially people that have really been working close to the trail industry for a while. It's a valuable tool for, again, developing or maintaining existing trails or new trails, as well as supportive facilities or things like signage. It's really been a useful tool for providing equipment purchasing or leasing, whether that be maintenance equipment. Grooming equipment is a big aspect of this program. We fund a lot of grooming equipment or grooming initiatives throughout the state through the RTP. As well as construction equipment. So a lot of our federal partners or, really partners all across the state have utilized this for purchasing excavators or mini dozers, things like that to really help with the process of developing or again, maintaining trails. Education initiatives can be funded through the RTP. So whether that be like just physical publications, printouts, or an actual program to either enhance user safety or get people out recreating on trails. All of those are available through the RTP. And then one other category I'll touch on as well is acquisition. We haven't really seen this utilized, but you can use the RTP for the acquisition of easements or outright purchase of a trail. Cool. Some examples. So I think we hear of trails. We often think of just a regular old hiking trail, but we also fund vertical trails through the Recreational Trails Program. One very powerful, I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but one partner that we really love working with in the climbing community is the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance. We also work with numerous other climbing organizations throughout the state. We love working with the SLCA to really help enhance the safety of some of our recreational climbing routes. So we'll work with them with bolt replacement, hardware replacement, or even just access trail redevelopment. And so this example here is a renovation of a access trail in Maple Canyon. User safety is also a really big part of the Recreational Trails Program. We work very closely with the Utah Avalanche Center We recently completed a project called the Trail Conditions Reporting Project, and this was really a statewide, regional-based text message system. So depending on where you were in the state, you would get a text message if you opted into this, and get an idea of exactly what the forecasting was going to be for your specific region before you went out into the backcountry to recreate that day. And so any initiative that's literally saving lives is something we're going to certainly be proud to support with the RTP. We also fund paved trails, so really just any type of trail, any type of surface can be funded through this. And any sort of motorized opportunities, whether that's snow, sand, anything on wheels, can be funded through the RTP. So, again, nitty-gritty stuff. Let's talk about the matching component. Yes.
Things, having been here a while.
Sure.
You've got a bike there. The motorized e-bikes go under motorized, right, category? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So under the motorized category, would you put e-bike projects?
That's a controversial question, Tara. So currently, e-bikes would go under motorized or diverse use.
Right. And water trails?
Water trails, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then one thing that it has been used before a while ago was a study on snowmobile use and so forth. So it seems to me that it can be used for users study of some type. But I think that there's a limit of what, 20 grand or something for that?
Yes, so there's a 5% limit on educational projects with the RTP. So
Okay.
we tend to hit that pretty quickly each year because, of course, we love funding things like that. I mean, it's a very diverse program, lots of different initiatives.
So I just wanted to add
you
on.
for that,
So thank you.
Cool. Let's see. I think I was just about to touch on just the basic kind of aspects for applying. So it's a 20% cost share. So one of the more generous sponsor matches of our grant program. So only a 20% sponsor match for applying for this. For those of you that have applied historically, we raised our award amount this past year up to $200,000. So it was $150,000 previously. So a little more funding available there. Excited about that. One key difference as well, again, for those who have historically applied to this, we have moved our grant cycle just a little bit earlier to really try to match some of our federal partners' timelines. So February 1st through March 31st will be the 2025 grant cycle. And just wanted to emphasize one more time the need for the NEPA review before applying for the program. So again, it's not something that needs to be completed before you apply. I mean, it can be. It certainly could be completed, but it's not something we require. So, before we can actually put a signed contract in your hands, we need to see that all of your NEPA has been completed. And I'll touch on that very briefly here. I mentioned we're trying to really help you guys with this process, make this a little bit more seamless. Just a general idea of how NEPA will work is, and this is just an example. It's going to be unique for each project, but for any sort of education or equipment purchase, usually not going to need NEPA. However, if you are developing something brand new, like a brand new trail or a brand new building, things like that typically will require a NEPA review. So it's very likely you might need to work with our State Historic Preservation Office to get a cultural survey. Or maybe have some environmental work done as well. Our federal partners actually handle their NEPA in-house, so they will do that through their own process. But yeah, that resource will be on our website, and we work very closely with UDOT. They help us out with a lot of our NEPA reviews, so lots of resources available online. And if you ever do have questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Okay, that's an overview of our federal grant programs, and we'll certainly answer some questions as they continue coming. I know we have our online questions coming in pretty rapidly here, so we'll save those for the end. However, speaking of trails, one thing I wanted to touch on is something we're very excited about this year is the fact that we had, for the first time, 4 different trail crews throughout the state. So we have historically only had 1 trail crew. We now have 4. And so rather than spending their time driving, they're spending their time really just getting some great work done. I think we have some trail crew members in the back. Shout out. And we got Tara and Jaden back there, two of our really great trail crew members. And this is a hardworking group. They're regionally based at the moment. So I mentioned we have 4 different crews, and these are available to the public. These are really available to anyone that wants to utilize this really valuable service. So this year they got a lot of work done, but again, this is the first year that we've had these four different crews. So I think we're expecting a really, really productive year coming ahead and in the future. But so 512 miles of trail work completed, or trail work was completed this past year. A large portion of that was on the motorized side, but certainly didn't forget about our non-motorized trails. 436 volunteer hours were contributed. But I really want to touch on, again, the fact that just about anybody can utilize this. So what we have here is the first of many more QR codes to come. But this QR code will lead you to the sign-up list to fill out a form to get on the Trail Crews list to take advantage of their valuable services here. And so any state agency, the Forest Service, our federal partners can also utilize this, the Forest Service, the BLM, the National Park Service, any local government, so county governments, municipal governments, even nonprofits can work with our trail crew. So highly recommend getting in touch with them, utilizing this form to get on this, I imagine, rapidly filling up list here. But yeah, this is a great group of guys and gals that will come out and really, really work hard to make our trails available to the public.
That's all on the website?
That's all on the website. But yep, this QR code here will get you to the sign-up list. But yeah, all these resources will be available later on. Sweet. Let's review just a couple dates that we touched on today. We had some changes both federally and on the state side, so it's good to be aware of these new updates. Many of them are exciting updates. So the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant, the Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant, and our brand new program, the Community Parks and Recreation Grant. Those are all opening up on January 13th, so very soon. Hope you have those project ideas rolling around your head. Maybe you're getting started on those, so it's very soon that we are going to open those up. Those close on March 14th. The Off-Highway Vehicle Recreation Grant is opening up February 1st, closing in the spring, and then actually opening up again in the summer. So yeah, 2 different grant cycles with that program. Again, another reminder that the Recreational Trails Program has shifted its date just a little bit, so closing a little earlier than previously. So March 31st is going to be the deadline for that program. And then the Land and Water Conservation Fund, we'll get you an application date on that very shortly here. In general, our website is something we're updating currently. We hope that in the very near future here, that'll be a very valuable resource for you to just check at any moment to get an idea of what different grant opportunities are open. So we really try to make sure that we have those dates posted and up to date. So you should be able to check that at any time to get an up-to-date assessment of what's open. And then one thing, really, this is something I want to emphasize now, but just I hope this is one of your key takeaways of this entire presentation, is the fact that we offer staff review. Our job, what we get paid to do, is to assist you all with applying to these programs. And so, we have these dates listed up here. I mentioned a lot of these programs are opening up in January and closing early spring. Reach out to us. I see that we have March 14th as a deadline, April 2nd as a deadline. Maybe don't reach out to us on April 1st. Maybe don't reach out to us on March 14th. However, up to like 2 weeks or so before the closing of any of these grants, please reach out to us before you click that submit button on our online application portal. That's what we are here to do. We will take a look at your project. Very frequently, we can dig through and very quickly see items that should be shifted around. So we're here to help you, be a resource for you, help your projects really shine when they get in front of the grant scoring committee. Cool. Another recap of a couple different changes this year. As mentioned by Emily, some of our grant programs have raised their award amounts. So the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant now is offering up to $1 million. And then our Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant also increased their award amount up to $250,000. One major change here is now the suggested match option. So we're no longer, I think they still are utilizing that regionally based sliding scale. However, if you're able to articulate a need to adjust that match component, let us know, state your case, and we're willing to work with you there. Another major change is that 25% of your match can now go towards pre-build costs. So things like design, permitting, those still need to occur after the contract has been signed, but that's still something now that you're going to be able to really put your funding towards, something that historically was not available for reimbursement. So excited to offer that. And then another major development is the new program we're offering, the Community Parks and Recreation Grant. So this is going to be available for municipal types of projects, up to $200,000 for developing new, kind of more traditional municipal recreation types. but also new stuff, but also restoration. So any existing playground or pool can be restored through the CPR grant. A reminder that goes up to $200,000. If you have projects that are going over that threshold, I would maybe steer you towards the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which again has up to $3 million available for some of those more traditional recreation types. And then our off-highway vehicle recreation program has its new access protection has raised that amount up to $350,000 or capped it at $350,000. The award amount for the OHV tourism has now increased to $50,000 with no cash match required. That's a big deal. And then the OHV tourism has also expanded its eligible costs. So it's worth looking into that if you have some cool projects ready. I am now going to jump over to something new and exciting. So for those of you that have come to these presentations previously, you experienced a lot of what we just did, a lot of fire hose information just coming right at you. And so what we're going to do now is try to do something beyond just an overview of our grant programs, but really try to give you some tools to be competitive as you apply to these. We're going to go through an actual budget form and highlight eligible expenses and what our scoring committees are looking for when you apply to these programs. So we have some really great examples we're going to go through to prepare your application. And then we're going to talk about what happens after you receive your grant. So we're going to talk about just the stewardship of your grant as you're going through the process, but also how to get paid. That's an important part, right? So we're going to talk about how to get paid for these grant programs. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up one of my colleagues here and pass it over to them. And yeah, thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Logan. Thanks so much. This is the most fun and exciting part of the whole presentation, so hope you're ready. As a quick note, this is just another resource. It's a flow chart. You can find it online as well as in the program guides. If you're new to grants and you're not even sure where to begin, take a look at this. It might lead you to the right type of grant. And again, we have all our contact information there and the various grant opportunities we have. So I'm going to dive into the budget. So for those who are perhaps budget experts, finance people, and or grant writers, bear with me for a moment. We really have heard a lot of great feedback from people that this was very helpful, and so we like to just walk people through what we're looking for when it comes to the budget sheet. So I'll just start at the top. We'll dive right in. The applicant is the organization who would be applying. Again, sometimes these partnerships, you might have a question of who would be the best applicant. Whether that's the nonprofit versus the county versus the city. Just keep in mind that whoever is the applicant, that's who we will be cutting checks to and sending all those reimbursements to the applicant. As far as the partner goes, it's any organization who's supporting the applicant's project, whether that's through cash or in-kind donations or contributions. Our match, the match is going to be the combination of both the applicant and partner contributions to the project. And then eligible costs, just obviously it's going to vary by grant. So just look into those program guides to get the details per grant. But really it's that cash and in-kind expenditures that have not yet been spent would be eligible for reimbursement. And then ineligible costs, again, is going to vary by the grant, but it also includes any costs that were incurred outside of the contract period. So as I mentioned earlier, we unfortunately cannot reimburse for any costs that may have been spent already before you're under contract. However, we will still request that you include this in your budget sheet so that we can see how much you have vested already into the project. It's still a valuable number to include. And then obviously those other ineligible things often can include the land acquisition design or NEPA. Cash sounds simple, but you'd be surprised. It's any item paid with currency and has supporting documentation like a receipt. So that could be purchased by either the applicant or the partner. And in-kind, what we consider in-kind is any non-monetary contributions. So that looks like volunteer work, donated labor, donated equipment, or discounts. So then we have, again, those pre-build costs, like we mentioned, anything that takes place before construction would begin, engineering, design, permitting. The total project cost will be all of the eligible costs necessary to complete the project. So this will combine both the grant award and the partner and applicant contributions. And then our next one, the total ineligible project cost takes your total project cost and adds in those ineligibles. So then it just, so that we're taking into consideration anything that perhaps was still very much related to the project but happened outside of the contract period. And then lastly, we have our contingency. This is something that we allow to be in your budget. It can be 10% of your, 10% of the budget can be allocated towards contingency costs. We hope that this can help alleviate the things such as inflation, or a bid goes, you put out to bid and then you're allocating this much money and then it comes back for the actual contractor, gives you the actual bill, and it's actually a little bit higher than you thought. So we allow 10% of your budget to go towards contingency. Highly recommend to include that always, because we can't give you more money after the fact. If things come back higher and they cost more, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, but we didn't allocate for that. So just include it. Some key considerations in the budget, we're looking for a good amount of detail. It doesn't, within reason, of course. We should have a good idea of what the project is going to be paying, what the grant is paying for, and what the project will accomplish. Just make sure your match requirement is going to be met. Again, we're kind of workshopping our budget sheet since we do have this new suggested sliding scale match requirement or option. So just hold on while we make that our budget sheet more conducive for that. But the ineligible and eligible costs, again, just review those different grant requirement or eligibilities so that you're not asking for something that might be ineligible. Again, keep track of the work already completed. In our example here, you'll see in a moment, someone had purchased land before they were under contract. It was $100,000. Yeah, we want to see, oh wow, they've already put in $100,000 to purchase that land. However, we can't reimburse for that. And then knowing the difference between the cash and in-kind. If it has a receipt, it's likely cash, and if it doesn't, then it's probably in-kind. So this is just the UORG budget sheet that we're gonna just briefly go over. This is, again, what you will see when you start to apply. You'll want to include your project name there at the top, and then again the project applicant. Like I said, that green box on the side, it says qualified for UORG match. Typically that would turn green if you're meeting your match requirement. I think with the suggested match, we're gonna have to kind of redo those formulas. So just hold on while we're working. We'll probably have it ready, but before the application opens up, so don't necessarily worry about it. But you can see there, that top line is orange. That's what the grant would be covering. So it's a $50,000 request. Underneath you see the applicant cash match. They're putting in $100,000, and then they have a partner that is putting in $25,000. The bottom, that will total, it will auto calculate. So if you're doing your math right, it's, the 175 is right there. If you have any grants that are going towards your match that you have not secured yet, you can, I think it is valuable to just put pending. It lets the committee know that you might not have it secured yet. If you do have it secured, you don't necessarily need to mark it or anything, but that is a question some folks have been asking about. As far as the in-kind overview, it's very similar. Again, it's just more high level. You can see there's an applicant in-kind match of some equipment for $5,000, and then there's some partner volunteers that we have a volunteer rate that I'll mention in our more detailed description of the in-kind match. So this is where we really want to see the cash detailed description. On your left-hand side, that column in the green, it is a drop-down box or menu, so you can just pick the type of category that the line item is going to be. Then you'll insert the awarded bidder. If you've gone out to bid, you don't know who it is yet, you can just put awarded bidder. If you know exactly the organization, please include that information. And then you'll just, again, tell us what exactly it's paying for. Is it mobilization? Is it the signage? Is it engineering? You can see over in the orange column, that's where you will outline what the grant itself is paying for. And so that's when you want to make sure the grant is only going to pay for things that are eligible. And then in those other two columns, you have your applicant funds that are covering those costs, and then whatever the partner may be covering. Again, this is just the detail for the in-kind. We have exactly what the volunteers were doing. They were, clearing land and flagging. You can see the number you want to pay attention to on this sheet is the $33.46. That is the most up-to-date volunteer rate. So if you have volunteers helping you out, that's how the rate that you would value them at is $33.46 an hour. And then you can see the equipment rental. We do have a resource online that does outline kind of the value of equipment. When it comes to more a skilled labor, we'll go over this in a second, but rather than the volunteer rate, if they're volunteering, skilled masonry, you would actually ask them what is your actual rate, and you would consider their actual rate as the amount that is going towards the in-kind. And then lastly, in this section, you see the ineligible project costs, like I alluded to, the land purchase of 2 acres. It happened outside of the contract period. It was $100,000, but please include it so that the committee can show you've already put in that much money for the project. So this is just a screenshot of the OHVR, just so for those interested in OHVR, you're not like, whoa, this isn't the budget sheet that she showed me. It's very similar. So UORG simply goes from top to bottom on over. You're going from left to right. It's a very similar concept in that you're including the vendor, you're breaking it out from the organization and the costs, and then you can see that column with the yellow at the top. It says what the OHVR fund or grant will be paying for, and then making sure those totals, they'll add up, turn green when the match has been met. So we're going to get some interactive, I guess. This is the fun part. We're going to test your knowledge on what is cash versus in-kind so that you can leave here feeling very confident. So just go ahead and shout it out, the answers if you know it. So money paid to a contractor by the applicant to construct a trail. Is this cash or in-kind? Cash. Let's hear some enthusiasm. A contractor donates their time to build a trail. Nice. And like I said, this is the value of the contract's real hourly rate or cost of service. Organization supporter donates $1,000 for project expenses, and the applicant uses these funds to purchase materials. Cash. Good job. Again, they bought something, so although it was donated, they used it already to purchase materials. So then another organization supporter donated $1,000 worth of lumber to the project. Perfect. Organization supporter donates a day of unskilled volunteer labor to build the project. In kind with that hourly state rate. An organization supporter donates a day of specialized or skilled volunteer labor to build a technical part of the project. In kind, great. And last one, you guys are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for 6. See if we get 100%. Applicant partner uses staff to work directly related to the project. For example, construction, very much on the ground, management or oversight. Ooh. Who said the We got 2 answers. I don't know, guys. Okay. You're both right. Good job. Trick question. It is cash if the payroll is included as documentation. We very much will support and pay for, like I said, very directly related staff time, whether they're, if they're billing the trail, we will cover their staff wages with the payroll included. If you do not include that payroll, it can be considered an in-kind match. So good job, 100%. So how much to match? Again, between all of our different programs, we obviously have different matching requirements or suggested requirements. So just keep in mind that the match is the combination of both partner and applicant, cash and in-kind, relative to the grant award. For UORG specifically, there is an in-kind limit. Like I said earlier, only half of your match can be in-kind, and then the other half must be cash. So this is just a quick review. RTP has a 20% match requirement. LWCF is a 50%. OHVR is a 25 minimum suggested, and then UORG operates on our county-based suggested match between 20 and 50%. All right, so our awesome recreation program director, I know his title, it's Patrick Morrison. He created this awesome formula for us because sometimes we get a lot of questions about, did I meet my match? Am I meeting my match? What is my match allowance? So this formula is really helpful, and we're going to walk through it so that when you have these questions, you can think, oh, wait, there's a formula, and I can go back and do this on my own. So the first step is you will take your grant request amount, and you're going to divide it by the percentage that the DOR is covering. That will give you an adjusted total project cost. With this adjusted total project cost in step 2, you will multiply it by the percentage that you as the applicant are covering, and that will give you your total applicant match amount. If you're curious to go a step further and you want to know, okay, I want in-kind, how much in-kind am I allowed, or what's my maximum, so your maximum in-kind allowance or the minimum cash required, you'll take that number and you'll divide it by 2 because it's the same number. So with that, we're going to practice. I never knew I was signing up to be a math teacher when I took this job, but it is really awesome to help our applicants. So please pull out your phones. If you're really cool and you brought a calculator and were prepared for this, or you have a calculator watch perhaps, or pen and paper if you're old school, we're going to do applicant A. So it's a $200,000 request. You're going to take $200,000 and you will divide it by the DOR share, which you can see is 75%. And then in step 2, that will give you your adjusted total project cost. In step 2, you will multiply it by the applicant match rate, which is 25%, or 0.25 for those of you who forgot how to do math. That will give you your applicant match amount, and then you can divide that number by 2 to know how much in kind am I allowed. So we have a brave soul that wants to shout out the answer. If you get it right, you can get a grant. Just kidding. But if you're wrong, just kidding. I wish I could do that. Anyone? 41.6. 41.6. Great question. So we're trying to figure out how much in-kind or how much cash are we required to put in, or are we allowed to put in? So yes, what did you get? 33,333. Okay. Okay, we got 2 answers of 33,333. So yes, if you take 200, again, let's try number 2 just so we can get more practice. So you take 150,000. You will divide that by 60% or 0.60 to get your adjusted total project cost. And then with that, you'll do step 2. You'll multiply it by the applicant match rate, which is 40% or 0.4, to get your applicant match amount. And then again, if you want to divide it by 2, then it gives you your maximum in-kind and or your minimum cash requirement. Any brave soul?
For applicant B, right?
B, yeah.
100,000, right, on the match required, making it 50,000 for the in-kind?
Sorry, say that again?
100,000 for the
Okay,
overall match,
sorry, thank you.
50,000 for the
Yes,
in-kind.
perfect. Yeah, you're a math whiz. You didn't know you could just do math and show up, get money. Okay, last one. We'll just do this really quick. 85,000. The DOR share is 50%. The match rate is 50%. If you remember math, you might be able to just do this in your head. Any answers? 425. So remember, when you like multiply and then you like divide, it reverses it all. So then it is still 85,000 and your allowance is 42.5. So again, might not seem applicable now, but when we're doing reimbursements, something Jorge will mention is in a partial reimbursement, you still must meet your match requirement. So if you're trying to do partial reimbursement and then your numbers get all like weird, it's not as clear, this formula will actually be very helpful in knowing how much allowance you have. And with that, I will turn it over to Jorge to go over the reimbursements.
Thank you, Emily, for the math. We love math here at the division. But yeah, congratulations, y'all. You received your first grant, and now we're going to go through that reimbursement / upfront funding and final reimbursement process and what that kind of really looks like. So taking a look more into like that first upfront funding, understand that you can request funding in advance at any point in time. That goes the same thing with the partial reimbursements. Understand that we do this in like 25% increments, so you can only really request 25% at a time, and you'll have a certain timeline to utilize that funding and go through that. So it would work up to about 75%, but as I mentioned, 25%, as soon as you finish that, utilize that funding, you have to show us proof that you spent that funding, and then you'll go to another 25%, then another 25%, and so forth up until you hit that final reimbursement. Again, keep in mind that there's kind of different requirements that you need when it comes to upfront funding, and then the partial reimbursement, and then even that final reimbursement. Again, they're just different processes, and so I'm just trying to highlight and show you what some of these differences are. For that final reimbursement, understand that you need to give us that final report of how the project went, as well as showing that proof of signage attribution to our grant, as well as potentially scheduling a site visit depending on what the project was and if it was really required. So just to give you an idea there. For that specific upfront funding, again, understand that you can request 25% at a time in that 25% increments. And some of the things that we're going to be needing in terms of the upfront funding and what you need to fill out in our upfront funding request form is going to be that need statement of why you're needing the upfront funding. We understand that not everybody has the resources to necessarily complete a project and then go towards that final reimbursement. We understand that some communities are working with a very limited budget, so that's why we're doing this, to try and help everybody out and do right to y'all. So again, that need statement's going to be required there. Your actual invoices of what you're planning to be paid for to get that upfront funding, and make sure that these invoices aren't expired. That's really important when you're submitting this form, as well as essentially the timeline of the funding and how it's going to be spent within those 3 months, and then just overall your post-advance reporting. Again, keeping that documentation of the invoices and how they were paid and within those 3 months, as you can't move forward until you show us proof to how you spent that funding. And the form is fairly simple to fill out. Again, it has your project name, your contract number, your contract expiration date, the date that the request was initially made, and then it goes to your grant recipient, your mailing address, the type of organization, total grant amount that you're requesting, the total grant award, and then the requested amount, or if there was a previous request. And then the overall remaining balance of your grant as well. Again, that need statement, and then the overall timeline, and then just the signature that you've gone through this and you understand what you're requesting. For this next part, this is more of the reimbursement. This is going both into your partial and your final reimbursements. As I mentioned, we tried to make these as comprehensive as possible. You would just X out what grant what grant type you have. Again, what you're filling out here is going to be your organization, the mailing address, the contract number, so forth. And again, more of describing what those funds were really used for. Again, you as the applicants can request for reimbursement at any point during the contract period. Again, as soon as you hit that last 25%, you'll have to report overall how the project went and just overall the final report of it. And then that required site visit and then the sign attributions. And then also please keep in mind that all of our grants do require different things within the actual closeouts. So understanding what those different requirements are. Again, you can speak to us to help you understand what those requirements are. This is a form that's super important when it comes to the actual reimbursement process. It's going to be that ledger, which is essentially the explanation, and it helps you check off to make sure that you have included all the required documentation within the reimbursement. It shows overall the detailed of expenses, the vendor, and then the receipt or check number. So again, it's a way of organizing your documentation within the actual reimbursement process, of having that check number, and then showing what check goes to what specific line item essentially of the budget. So again, really important to include this. It also shows that kind of small breakdown of the in-kind matches to what line item hits with what line item aligns with each specific line item. Keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to use this specific ledger. However, I would say that it is a little bit easier for us if you do, just because we're familiar with this ledger. So I would recommend using it just to keep with uniformity and helping us. I'd say that things tend to be a little bit easier if it's similar, and it helps us to understand what's going on there. But again, the biggest thing I think here for you all is that it helps you check mark that you have all of your required documentation within the actual reimbursement. Some of proofs of payment, I know that this may seem a little bit simple in the sense, but just to give you ideas of what those common proofs of payment are, they are going to be your receipts, any scanned copy of a physical receipt, any online receipt, your cash checks, your credit card statements. Just ensure that you highlight what item you're showing proof of payment for, as well as your bank statements. Same thing, making sure you highlight it. Again, continues on with payroll, highlighting what the pay periods were, and then any sort of billed labor of equipment on the spreadsheet, and just make sure it corresponds with that proof of payment. Again, all these need to be listed on the actual ledger. You can black out any sensitive information that might be on there. And then just to give you some ideas in the sense of invoices. Invoices are really helpful for the upfront funding process, not in the actual reimbursement process, because you need to show your actual receipts of proof of payment. So this isn't going to count, an invoice isn't going to count as proof of payment, even if it has a stamp of paid. We need to see the actual documentation of your cash receipts, your credit card statements, those sort of things. So again, please keep in mind with invoices that's not what we're looking for in terms of the actual reimbursements. It just doesn't work as a standalone proof of payment. And then when it comes to staff wages, if you're trying to include this for more of a cash match, please understand that we like to see that provided payroll. That's going to be important there. If not, it's going to go more into the in-kind match. And then this is just more of a kind of breakout of the reimbursement in the sense of in-kind. This is another spreadsheet that you can utilize. You can use your own, but again, as I'd mentioned before with the ledger, I'd recommend mostly using ours just because it's a little bit simpler for us to know because we understand this form a little bit better. But so long as yours is in a comprehensive way of understanding, it should be fine. Again, this goes through overall through the date of contribution, your description of the item, the purpose, and then the value and how it was determined and who made that determination. This is essentially the proof of your in-kind. If you go a little bit lower into that second smaller spreadsheet, you can see there's a crew leader signature just as saying that it's approved. If you're using any in-kind skilled labor, please use that real hourly rate for that individual. In this example, we have that skilled masonry at $40 an hour, just to give you an idea there. These are some of the common issues that we actually tend to get throughout the reimbursement process. Again, some of our reimbursements sometimes don't have the actual ledger, which again, as I mentioned, that's a vital part of the reimbursement process, as that's your way of making sure that you have all of your items that you're requesting for, and to show everything that's lined up, that you have that documentation. Another thing tends to be those expenses, and if they were taken outside of the actual contract period. Again, making sure if you want your items to be eligible, ensuring that you utilize that funding after the contract, or after the signed contract, after you get that signed. Another thing tends to be is numbers aren't necessarily adding up within the actual budgets and just that spreadsheet. If you need to make sure that math is correct, if it's not, we'll reach out to you and try and work with you and figure out where the numbers are wrong. But that's something that we tend to get here as well. Another thing tends to be the actual missing documentation. And again, that's why those ledgers are really important, as again, it helps you check mark that you have everything. And then any of those large in-kind contributions that haven't been confirmed from the donating party. So anything for larger than $1,000 needs some sort of form of confirmation, whether that's an email, a letter, or a donation receipt to show that that's an in-kind contribution to the actual project. And then another thing is that the match hasn't necessarily been met. Understand that throughout the reimbursement process, if you're getting that 25% reimbursement, you have to meet that 25% match, and go on throughout the process. So that was what Emily had hinted towards previously, making sure that you hit that required minimum match for that specific 25%. And again, whenever you're actually ready for the actual reimbursement, please reach out to us, and that way we can give you an updated form of reimbursement packets, as we're the ones that are going to have that updated form more than likely to help you out. And again, just utilize us as a resource. We're here to help you and support you. We want all applicants and applications to be successful, so please give us a call if you have any other questions. And next, I'll actually pass it on to Evan to talk and finish us up with the last bit of our presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Wyatt. Actually, I have that water. Thanks. We have about 45 minutes left, and I think we're going to use the majority of this time to talk about a couple more math problems here, if we can pull these up. I'm just kidding. We have like 10 minutes. What do we got? Didn't even look at my time. All right, we got like 18 minutes left. We're going to use it to our advantage here. So I'm going to talk about braiding grants, and I touched on this briefly, but really the idea here is the fact that we have so many different grant opportunities that we talked about today, and the really the best part about some of these programs is that they can you can use them to offset your costs. These grants braid together, if you will. You can match some of our state grants with our federal grants, and we have an example for you here. One kind of common braiding we see is a combination of the UORG grant, so the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant, and the Recreational Trails Program, the RTP. So we love seeing these different grant programs benefit each other and, again, create a more comprehensive project, a larger scale project. So, if you're thinking about, if you have sort of a larger initiative and you're really trying to drum up different funding resources, this is a great opportunity to take advantage of. We've certainly seen UORG and RTP match together multiple times. And in this here example, we have a $100,000 project. And as you can see, they've utilized UORG for $40,000 of that project. And then they've also used the Recreational Trails Program for an additional $40,000. So that's a much larger project than they might have originally been able to accomplish. And so as you can see, the applicant still needs to tie in at least a $10,000 cash contribution within that, 10% cash contribution to that. And then you can see they also utilized half of their match for using in-kind services. So again, taking kind of everything we've taught you today, that balance of in-kind and cash, but also taking advantage of matching and braiding other funding resources. So just want to make you guys aware of that. Certainly something worth taking advantage of. I got a couple best practices to run through, and a lot of this is stuff that we already went over today, but it's worth reminding. So Start early. We talked about these grant dates and how they're very much around the corner here. Hopefully, you guys already have some projects kind of fleshed out if you're planning on applying this next year. So the earlier you start, the better, and the earlier you reach out to us, the better as well. So I'll say it again, we are here for you. That is what our job is. So if you have a project in mind at any phase of that project, whether you're just sort of drumming up ideas and coming up with something, or maybe you have it more fleshed out and you think it's ready for the big times, come to us first. That's what we're here for, and we want to be a resource to you guys. So make sure you get our contacts today. We'll list all of our emails and fun stuff like that. Please reach out to us. Another one, we saw a couple questions. We've been answering some of your questions if you submitted one through our online tool here. And one of the questions I saw is who should be the applicant? And it's really worth double checking some of the eligibility requirements on these grants. One of the questions was for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Unfortunately, nonprofits cannot apply to this program. However, they can partner with an eligible applicant to apply. So make sure to read those eligibility requirements and ask us about those, and really we can come up with a way that you'll most likely be able to use these programs to your advantage. And in that example, for instance, last year we had a nonprofit that wanted to apply for the LWCF. They partnered with the local county, and they were able to secure the grant. So if you find the right partners, a lot of these can be accomplished. Speaking of partners, we love, or at least our scoring committee loves, seeing projects that are taking many different user groups, bringing many different user groups to the table, reaching out to their communities and engaging their communities and the recreation users, the partners within that community. That's absolutely something you should be taking not just advantage of, but something you should be researching when you apply to a program. Who's going to be impacted? Who should be involved? Who are the right partners to have at the table? If you've done that legwork, that very important legwork, a really beneficial thing you can do for yourselves is showcase that. We want to hear that. So tell us how you did that, and the best way to showcase that is through letters of support. So please attach those letters of support when you're applying to these grant programs. Another thing to keep in mind is that each of these programs are really designed under the idea that any applicant has the resources available to maintain these sites. So if you're applying to any of these grant programs, we expect that you're able to maintain this property, this project, for at least 20 years or hopefully forever. So make sure that you're not only have those resources available, but make sure you showcase that showcase that to us in your application as well. Accessibility and universal design. Jorge touched on this a bit. We love seeing different projects that are going to allow everyone to access them. So if you've really gone through that effort to ensure that you have accessible amenities, that is very much something that is appreciated and encouraged when you're applying to the program. So something we're working on providing more resources for. There's so many just tiny little differences that you can make when you're designing a trail or designing a parking lot even, or playground equipment that are going to allow more users to access that site. So if you've taken that time to really consider those different specifications that might allow a hand cycle, a disabled user to access your trail, those are things that we appreciate and we know the community appreciates as well. Shovel-ready timeline. Please be able, when you apply, I highly recommend giving us an idea of when you're able to start your project, when you're going to complete your project. These are things that showcase that you've really thought about the whole phase of the whole different phases of your project. So make sure you're communicating to us clearly, giving us an idea of when you're going to start your project, and make sure that you're really applying at the right time. Is your project ready for this? Like, do you feel like your project's at the point where if you were awarded funding that you could start quickly? Make sure you're really considering those things as well. When you're applying, you're going to have to fill out a project abstract and a project description. These are two different things, and I'll highlight those differences. Project abstract, we love hearing the fluffy stuff. If you have a story, tell us the story. Tell us how this project's going to benefit your community. We certainly want to hear that, and we love the fluffy, pretty stuff. But more importantly, and what's really going to help you kind of get a leg up in the scoring meetings, is really just a clear description of what your project's going to accomplish. So the fluffy stuff's great, but what we really, really need is specific details. How much funding is going towards the specific aspects of your project. That's really where your budget's going to shine. If you can communicate clearly in your application budget where the funding is going, how much funding is going to specific units, things like that. We know that there's, of course, going to be somewhat of a guessing game with some of that, but the more you can communicate to us where funding's going and what the project's going to accomplish, the better. Speaking of which, using correct language is a big one. That just kind of goes back to researching the different grant programs. And some of these are just little things, we can't fund sidewalks, but we can fund trails. So just, make sure you're using language like that and keeping an eye out for things that are eligible versus ineligible as far as expenses. Another, we talked about really bringing in your community and engaging as many partners as you can. One really powerful partner is working with your local tourism director or tourism department, or maybe someone on your marketing team, anyone that's going to really be able to highlight the economic benefit of your project or the local draw that your project will bring. I know Emily talked a little bit about the Pavant Trail System and how much of a draw that has been to mountain bikers all over the state. We love projects that are going to bring that economic benefit to a region, that are going to create new jobs in your area. Please, if you're going through that effort, again, showcase that to us and tell us why this project's going to be such a valuable benefit economically or what have you. Connectivity is the final one I'll touch on. We love seeing projects that are going to tie into a larger recreation initiative. There's a lot of trails in this state. We love seeing projects that are going to allow more users to access those trails, maybe bring those trails closer to home. So connectivity is big. A lot of trailside facilities are something we like to support as well. Maybe if you're looking at building a new community park and you don't know where to put it, try putting it somewhere that would be accessible via a active transportation route or something like that. Things we love to see. Cool. And then the best practice of all is something I've already hammered in, and I'll do it one more time, is reaching out to us. We are here for your, to assist. We have a website that you can certainly check to get an idea of updated resources and any updates regarding like application cycles and things like that. That would be recreation.utah.gov. One more reminder that we have an online folder with all of the resources that we provided today, whether that be the physical printouts in the back, these grant slides from this tour, or even these budget sheets that we went over today. All of those are in this digital asset folder. So you can access it through this QR code. We have more QR codes in the back. Or, again, reach out to us. We'll send you any of this. I'll also emphasize, we have those printouts for our state programs. All of our federal program printouts are digital, so those are all in this folder as well. And then, again, best resource is us. Give us a shout. We have our emails listed at the bottom of this, but feel free to come say hi to us afterwards, and we can give you our business cards. But we are always available to help you out with these, and we're going to offer some office hours as these grant date application dates approach. One quick plug for the Utah Trails Conference coming up in April in beautiful Kanab, Utah. That will be taking place April 23rd and through the 24th. For those of you that haven't been to this event, this is a pretty popular, very fun time to come meet with different recreation users and recreation managers throughout the state and get those ideas spinning for good projects and best practices and just really an idea of trends and topics in the recreation world. It's also just really fun. It's a pretty cool experience or pretty cool opportunity to hop on adaptive equipment or new maintenance equipment. I got to operate a mini dozer last year. That was pretty fun. But there's also workshops to go out and see cultural sites nearby or hop on a gravel bike and do a gravel bike tour. Highly recommend joining us at this, and we'll probably go over some grant stuff at this conference as well. But this QR code, one of many, will take you to the registration for the conference. So hope to see you there. But really, that's it. Thanks for coming. One more QR code to sign up for our newsletter. This actually is a valuable resource for keeping up to date with our grant cycles, as well as information about new grant programs. If you were following our newsletter, you would have maybe even already known about our new Community Parks and Recreation grant, or you might have already known about our trail crew. This is where we're going to be able to tell you and communicate all of the updates of our division. But yeah, I really just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to join us today. This is our 12th and final stop on this grant tour. Really, the idea behind this whole effort is just to share the benefits of these programs to the entire state. We want to see more applications each year. We want to see new ideas and new projects each year. So thank you to you all for coming up and with these awesome projects and keeping these programs alive. So again, we're going to hang out. We are going to also answer questions. Let's not skip that. So I think we got a lot of questions through that little online tool, and we answered those. So if you submitted a question, we've likely already answered that for you. However, we got a couple minutes here. Please, are there any questions for any of us up here? Yes.
I have a question about match formula.
Oh yeah, sorry. Microphone's coming your way.
I had a question about the match formula.
Yeah.
In doing, I often will do the math frontwards and backwards. So when I go back, on the $200,000 and the 25% match, I come back and my total project cost is then $216,000, and the match comes out at 33%. So I'm trying to figure out if how the match can do. I see your formula and it doesn't calculate. And I've been doing this for a long time. So $200,000 is that 25% is $50,000.
Yeah.
And then $150,000 from the grant is $200,000 in a project.
Sure, that's a valuable question. I don't think we're going to do public math again
I know,
right now,
it's
but
terrible.
let's talk with you after this. And,
Okay.
Our formula is available online. We can certainly assist you with that and make these formulas. Hopefully provide some more examples, make this easier for you guys. Great question, though. Thank you. Yes, another question.
Thanks. I represent an entity that we manage several different parks in our community. If we were to apply for a grant, are they site specific? So can we update our playgrounds at 4 different sites that we maintain, or does it have to be one grant per site?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can at least speak for the LWCF, in which case we have seen multiple site restoration initiatives within one application. It really depends on the dollar amount, I would say, as well. Like, there's, especially for, like, say, the Community Parks and Recreation grant, you're probably going to hit that $200,000 threshold pretty quickly. But I imagine if you can fit a couple different restoration initiatives within that, that would be eligible. But I'll maybe let our state administrators answer that. It's a new program, so I think we're adapting as well.
Yeah, and I'm happy to like touch base after and talk more strategy, because one thing to note that, again, if it is over 200,000 and you're trying to, I'd maybe recommend focusing on one to at least get something going. Because if you did apply for multiple locations, you would, in theory, compete against yourself. So if you did have like some priority ones, maybe focus on that first. You could phase it out and then apply next year for the next, location or the next site. Is a strategy a lot of people will do to kind of phase out a project and get funding. You would have to reapply every year, but that's one way to approach it. That helps.
Yes.
Let's grab a mic.
Who? To Jeff?
This is not a question. This is a hint to help applicants. I've been a grant reviewer, and from my experience, one of the two of the most common mistakes that I've seen, budget numbers in the budget sheets and the narratives don't match, or there are errors in the budget sheet. So you have to really focus on get your numbers right in your application, not just in the reimbursement stage, but in the application stage. The other problem that I've seen common is that applicants don't answer the questions very well. They miss the question, or they don't provide the detail. And that's what scorers are looking for. So just to help you out.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's another great reason, another plug to reach out to us grant managers beforehand, because that's when we would catch those things. Like if there was any sort of issues with your budget, that would be the time we would catch that, or maybe your questions haven't been answered clearly. So please reach out to us. Thank you for that. Any other questions? I see one here in the front. Okay.
You talked about braiding the different, can you use separate DOR grants for the same project initially? Like, here's phase 1 of a park development, so we're going to use the CPR, and then later we'll use UCOR for the exact same project. Do you know what does that make sense?
Yeah, that's absolutely ideal. That's what we want to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me elaborate. So, for instance, if you were applying to, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, usually it's our federal programs that are going to match better with our state programs, but multiple phases of a project. So, I mean, if you purchased a piece of property with the Land and Water Conservation Fund, we would love to see the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant come in and help fund a trail within that or something like that. But yeah, with our state programs, it gets a little dicier as far as matching. But as far as like multiple phases, is there a problem with that?
So CPR is part of your grant.
Okay.
So you can't match the grant with itself. However, he was also talking about phases. So you could have a large project phased by one aspect of the UR grant, which could be CPR, and then the traditional UORG. So very confusing, but I hope it got understood.
Yeah, phases are fair game. Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone else? Anyone? I see one in the back here. Oh, we got the microphone coming to you. 1 second.
I have a teacher voice. Oh, the recording. In Appendix B, it lists the outdoor classroom grant, but I don't find any detail in the booklet.
Sure.
So our outdoor classroom grant typically ran with UORG, but we wanted to pair it with the Children's Outdoor Recreation Education Grant. So it will be offered next fall. There will be more resources online for those. It essentially will fund any type of outdoor classroom infrastructure only. So again, if you want more details, happy to connect you with Caroline. But again, that cycle just closed. You have some time to prepare for the outdoor classroom grant.
And
there will be more detail in a one pager explaining what's eligible and what you can apply for, the amounts and everything. Yeah. Had a question?
Yeah. My question is in regards to the 28-month time frame that I saw in the booklet. So is this 28-month time frame, is that for all grants discussed today, or is that just the UOR grants? And then also, if you are doing a long-term project where you are considering that 28-month timeline, if there is a chance that your completion date falls outside of that, would you still recommend applying in this cycle just to familiarize the committee with the project itself?
Sure, good question. So yeah, that 28-month timeline is universal across our state-funded grant programs. As far as timelines, I mean, again, that just kind of goes back to communication. If you can communicate to us, that this is going to be a longer-term project, I think, as well as like throughout the project, we have progress reports. That would be a great time to tell us maybe 6 months into the project, like, hey, we're getting started here. We hit some snags with permitting. Maybe we'll need a little bit more time, but we really want to be flexible with you guys in regards to completing a project. But all of that is best facilitated through communication.
Yeah, and it could be an opportunity to phase it out again if you can really identify, okay, in this next 28 months we can really finish this section of it, and then next year come back and do the next phase that you can accomplish in 28 months. So, great question though.
Cool. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to hang around. If you have any other questions, come up and talk to us. But thank you again, guys. Hope this was informative for you, and have a good rest of your day.